Good? Great. Dear panel, men are born free, and yet everywhere they are in chains. Unnatural chains we call borders, created and erected by nation states. Nation states have evolved into a situation where capital can move freely, but labor cannot. We say that the concept of the nation state, of organizing your society by an arbitrary social construct of ethnicity, of nationhood, of who is in my in-group and who do I not need to care about, is something which has served the world wrong, and we are very glad to welcome its demise. We're saying, I want to, before I get into my points, to clarify something that is important. Because we've been hearing a lot from the first half about corporations and why corporations are good or corporations are bad. We're going to show, obviously, why we think that OG did a great job in this. But it's important for us to understand that what globalization means in this is that people are more interconnected, and it means that the nation state is losing its monopoly. What this means is that it's being replaced by a complex web of strengthening of local communities, supranational organizations like the UN and the EU, and yes, of course, also corporations. But what we're saying what you need to take away from closing government here is that the dominant narrative of belonging and identity due to ethnicity is bad, and that the globalized narrative provides much better outcomes for the world writ large, from everything from climate change to the conditions of marginalized communities. That's it. So I'm going to have 3 points for you today on why nation states are a bad way to organize society, why globalization is a great equalizer, and why transnational issues need a globalized world. But before that, 3 points of rebuttal. Now I'd like to thank the previous speaker for giving an absolutely terrific government speech, because he does in 3 ways. So firstly, when he's talking about human rights, and he's talking about why the hatred of the people in the United States towards immigrants, we absolutely agree, and we say that this is because of the dominant narrative that the nation state brings of this is something that's mine and this is something that is yours, that is not yours. Therefore, someone coming in is encroaching upon my territory, on the territory of my nation. No, and therefore, when we say that this is something that feels as a loss, when we're moving towards more and more open borders, which is clearly what we're standing for on our side of the house, is also opening government brought. Then people moving around is much more of a normal thing, and something that less causes hatred. Secondly, when he said that this leads to a destruction of sovereignty, obviously it does. Of course we agree. Nation states are sovereign. When there are no more nation states, there's no more sovereignty. But listen to this, and this is crucial, because what he says is that people are willing to die for this. That's the problem. That people are willing to go to war and die for something that isn't for them, but because their feeling of the people that I might belong to are being attacked. I'm not going to take you. I'm going to take closing. So thirdly, on interdependence. So he already agrees that interconnectivity reduces conflict, and we see this in the world. In the world, like as Thomas Friedman wrote that both that. I'm seriously not going to take you, though. So that countries in the Dell supply chain have never attacked one another, because if you're in a supply chain to each other, you need one another. You're much less likely to be in conflict, and only once in history have places with McDonald's actually attacked one another. Why? Because if corporations need supply chains, countries that are dependent on one another for their income, the areas are much less likely to attack one another. I'm still going to take closing, but not right now. So, why nation states are a bad way to organize society? Look, nationhood is a social construct. This is imagined community where people are told that they belong, and because the nation state monopolizes education, it's drilled into them in their culture and their education constantly. But we say that the idea of a nation state is a lie. It is an empty narrative, and what it means to be a Brit, what it means to be Israeli, changes constantly with whatever the needs of the dominant portion within that in-group says that it is. So why is this bad? We say that it creates in-groups and out-groups, and so that the people who do not belong to this construct nation, or people who are never good enough, can never belong. We don't need to care about them. So say, no, please, you're very distracting. I'm not going to take you. So we're saying that in-groups are lied to. They're being kept down, being shipped to war because their nation is under attack. So we're saying that monopolizing power by constraints of ethnicity is harmful because it is a narrative that allows dominant groups to oppress the weak, to oppress minorities, and there's no recourse. Because we're saying that when a nation state needs to protect its borders, to protect their sovereignty that OO cares about so much, then they don't let people leave. They let capital leave because it helps them, but doesn't let workers leave. I'm going to continue more now to my second point before that closing.
People will always have an immense need to protect their history and culture. When you have more daily interaction, more immigration, you create more antagonism and more pain, and therefore more populism and the rise of trying to protect.
Okay, so exactly what we're saying is that what globalism does is it brings you into contact with other cultures, and it makes your ethnicity no longer the dominant reason why you were to identify yourself as A or B. We say that this fragmented web can let you identify with people along other common markers, not just are you part of the same nation, and that's good. So, secondly, we say that the globalization is only bad in a nation-state context. Because they say that when they say that outsourcing is bad, who is it bad for? It is great for the people who are now getting these jobs. It's just bad, but it's bad for the country that's now losing these jobs. So the people are only getting hurt because they can't move to where their jobs are, to where the capital is. So we're saying, sure, companies have done horrible things, but they've only done so because the nation states have abetted them in doing so. Corporations aren't the ones keeping people in sweatshops. Nation states are the ones keeping them in sweatshops because the people don't have an alternative. Because if this is the only place where you can work, then this is where you must work. But when we're saying that as globalization is weakening these kind of boundaries, and that people can move to where the money is, then they are no longer constrained with it. So corporations won't have the ability to do these kind of evil things. Finally, on transnational issues, because we see that nation states only care about their parochial concerns and can keep them from this. We say that there are issues in the world like climate change, like epidemics, like transnational crime. When we say that because of ideas of sovereignty, we don't want other countries to infringe in my sovereignty, so I'm not going to raise taxes on pollution. We say that in a world that is more global, that is ruled more by supranational organizations, there is more of an incentive to change these things when it's not hurting my nation. We are very proud to propose. Thank you.